Years Way Podcast. I originally grew up in Stewart and DuPont in Flint, Michigan. I live currently now in Flint, over by the plant, and I am here to tell you my near-death experience story. Shout out to my man at Out of the Mud G for having me on today. It was very cool. I really appreciate it. I'm humbled that he asked me to come on the show. And without further ado, here we go. August 9th, 2009, I was taking my wife and kids home from a car accident, or from getting into a car accident. We got off the Clio Montrose exit. I hung a left. A truck came out with a trailer, and I went to switch lanes, and when I did that, an F-250 pulled out in front of us, and it was going to teabag the truck into the car, and my wife and daughter's side would have been hit broadside on a T-bone, so I had to make a split-second decision, and so I turned into the truck, and when I did that, we helicoptered 2.5 times. The next thing I smelled was the airbags going off, and I turned to my wife. I asked if she was okay. She said she thought she was okay. My daughter was screaming in the back. I had to get out of the car. I jump out of the car. She said her arm was broken. I couldn't get the door open. As soon as I opened up the door, I stepped on my left foot. I felt pain shoot through my left foot. I knew something was wrong. I opened up the door to check on my daughter, and her arm wasn't broken. And then I fell on the concrete, and I watched the clouds turn purple, yellow, and blue, and it was 91 degrees that day, and I realized the concrete was not hot, and the last thought out of my mind was I did okay. And then the next thing I remember is my soul sucked out of my body, and my eye holes turned into pin lights, and I was surrounded by black smoke, and I died. The next thing I remember was somebody very, very far away saying, his blood pressure 70 over nothing, keep trying. So in my head, I said, pump, 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 pump. And the next thing I felt was this massive pain shoot through my body, and I was back in my body. It took, we went to the hospital. Wife and kids were good. Wife had a broken finger and whiplash. Kids were okay. It took about 15 months, but I ended up being diagnosed with a brain injury called horror fusion. And unfortunately, it ended up being the rarest brain injury of all time. I'm only the 8th person that's ever had it. And so they told me to go to the Kellogg Eye Center because the vision issues are in the eyes. And so they told me, you're going to have a eye realignment surgery. And I said, well, what is an eye realignment surgery? And they said, well, we're going to strap you down. And they strapped me down like Hannibal Lecter and then wheeled me into the room, knock you out, cut into the white part of your eye, wake you up, adjust it, knock you back out, and finish up. 3-month recovery, 3 months of therapy, go back. The doctor said it didn't work. He said, one of my students is the #1 surgeon in the United States. We're going to have him come out because it's such a rare case. So he came out, and he said he wanted to do the surgery. And I asked him what are the chances of success. He said half. I said half. He said, yeah, 1/2 of 1%, 99.5% of failure. So I asked him, I said, what else is there to do? And he said, there's nothing. So I said, okay, let's try it. So we did another surgery. And 3 months therapy, 3 months recovery, another surgery. Get down to the last one. He walks in. He said, well, Mr. Walsh, I was 33. And he said, I'm sorry it didn't work. Your life is over. By the way, no one's lived past 20 years with this injury. Good luck. Bullet. Right to the chest. Because I had no idea what to do. But I wasn't going to give up. So I tried to find a neurologist, and at this time they had me seeing a psychologist, and he had told me before I got my diagnosis that it was all in my head and I was making it up, and I was very stressed out about that. The sleepless nights and depression, thinking that you're crazy, was pretty tough. When I finally got the diagnosis, however, I headed over to I had a manager that was taking care of all of my doctor's appointments, and she said, "Oh, I'll send the doctor the diagnosis." I said, "No, I'll do it." And so I go in there and I walk into his room, and he's about 135 pounds, about 5'7", floppy brown hair, big Adam's apple, and he had a big desk in front of him with a bunch of files on it. And I lofted the manila envelope onto his desk. And he said, "Oh, I heard you got a response." I said, "Yeah." So I let him read it. And he said, "Oh, and ah." And I waited for him to finish. And he said, "Well, what do you think?" And I said, "Well, I'm curious, doctor. What psychosis does this fall under?" And he says, "Well, it doesn't fall under psychosis. It's an issue with the brain. It's an injury." And I said, "Well, that means you suck at your job." And he said, "Oh, really?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "You know what you do with people that suck at their jobs?" He said, "What's that?" He said, "You fire them." He said, "You can't fire me." I said, "Watch this." And I called my manager, and I put it on speaker, and I'm looking right at his face. And I said, "You know that jerk that you had me seeing?" She said, "Yeah." I said, I don't like him. I want somebody else." She said, "Okay." So he gets off the phone, and I said, "Well, since you're going to charge my insurance $244 for this, we got 45 more minutes. And I spent the next 45 minutes just staring at him. Now, admittedly, I shouldn't have done that. And he did call, and my manager called me and said, "Isaac, you cannot fire a doctor." And I said, "Well, last time I checked, I was paying him, so I'm pretty sure I can fire him." And she said, "We're going to have you see somebody else." And I was like, "Yeah, that makes sense to me." And at the time, I didn't know this, but I had started saying everything I was thinking, which is a side effect of the brain injury. And if there's a problem you never want to have, be saying the things you're thinking and not knowing you're saying them. Guess how much trouble you can get in? A lot. And let me give you some trouble that I was getting in. This happened for 3 years of my life, I have to tell you. And my wife told me it was happening, but nobody has that problem. So I'm like, this isn't an issue. And I was wrong. All right, so here's what happened. In the middle of this, I'm trying to find a neurologist that'll help me get better. Every time I saw one, they said, "I'm sorry, your injury is impossible to fix." I looked up that word. It means cannot be done. Cannot beat it. Impossible. I refuse to believe that. And I asked people, after 5 doctors, would you give up? After 10? After 20? Well, in the mid-30 range, every time you go to the doctors, they make you fill out the paperwork, right? Name, address, phone number, surgeries, which was at like 13, drugs, which was at 11 at the time. And it gets very boring. You go in, you see them, they can't help you. You go in, you see them. And I was seeing one of these guys every week I was seeing one, sometimes twice a week I was seeing one. And we're in the mid-30s at this point. And I go in, and I fill out the paperwork. And at this time, I'd been stuck in my house for about 3.5 years. I couldn't leave. Only surgeries and therapy was the only time I left my house. So I was really, really struggling. And so I go to the doctors, and I fill out the paperwork. And at the time, I was playing Call of Duty, and I was playing Hardcore Team Deathmatch. I was top 10 in the world because I had nothing else to do. So if you're going to do something, be good at it. So I filled out the paperwork, name, address, phone number, surgeries, drugs, blah, 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 hobbies. And I was like, oh, underneath hobbies, I put assassin. So I go into the doctor's, and he takes the file, and he looks exactly how you think he looks. Brown hair, white guy, blue shirt, yellow tie, white jacket, tan pants, tan shoes, right? "Hello, Mr. Walsh, how are you?" "Hey, how are you?" And he opens up the file, and oh, and ah, right? And so all of a sudden I hear him go, "Huh." So he turns around, and it says, under hobbies here, Mr. Walsh, it says that you're an assassin. And I said, "Yes, that's correct." He said, "You kill people." I said, "That's the definition of an assassin." So he kind of looked at me sideways, and he said, "You really kill people?" And I said, "Doctor, if I have to answer every question 3 times, this is going to take a really long time. So can we just move on with it?" And kind of moved on, and so he turned around and asked me a couple of questions, and you could tell he was irritated, and he took a couple steps towards the door, and he had this little smirk on his face, and he kind of turned back to his left, and he said, "Am I going to have to call security?" And just as calmly as I could say it, I said, "You can. They're just not going to make it here in time." And he went from mad to absolutely terrified, which was the funniest thing I had seen in several years. So when security gets there, no, I'm just playing. They did tell me not to come back, oddly enough, which was weird because, it's a brain injury for a reason. So I'm going through all this, and I'm depressed. I'm sick constantly. I can't get better. I'm stuck in my house. I can't go anywhere, and I can't do anything. Depression's really bad. Like, how it's so bad, like it's a blanket, and it just feels like a weight that you can't get off of. It was dark and black, and I couldn't get away from it, and I couldn't go anywhere, and I had no ability to help anyone. I was an anchor to everybody else, and I was like, killing myself would be the right answer. And so I planned the whole thing. I didn't talk to anybody about it because I'm a go person, do it or not do it person. And so I'm going through it, and I get ready to do it, and I'm sitting on my steps of my condo on the 4th step, and I'm like, all right, God, this is it. It's go time. And I was like, if you're real, this is the moment. And as sure as I'm sitting here, this little voice said, all things work together for good, which half scared me and half pissed me off, right? So I jumped up, because I'd never heard a little voice in my head before, and I pointed at the ceiling, and I said, you prove it. I said, what did you want? And I thought about it. I really thought about it. I said, I want wisdom. I want to know why I'm here, and I want to know what I'm doing. And so I started to take the book of Proverbs and separate it out by category, trying to understand, like, if God's got a plan, then there's a reason for this, and if there's a reason for this, there's an outcome. And that was the purpose. And I didn't believe it. I grew up in church, and church people are not bad people. They're all trying to get good, but my experience has been negative, and religion wasn't a thing for me. But I started reading. I started applying some things to it. And, like, for example, being in the military, I don't know about the rest of you, but they thank you for your service, and they focus that rage into a razor point, and then they never tell you how to shut it off, right? And so then when you get out, the things that were good, when you get out, they're suddenly not good, and all of a sudden you're the jerk when you're doing the same things you were doing before, and now you're a bully or something, and it didn't make any sense. So I started working on that, and there's these 2 verses, and the first one says, a soft answer turns away wrath, which I didn't even know what that meant. And my family's Irish, and so we disagree from time to time. And I was in an argument with a family member, and this person was yelling at me about God knows what. And we were yelling, and their nose touched my nose, which for me, that gives me permission to, beatings will commence and to morale improves. And this stupid verse pops in my head, a soft answer. And I was like, well, if I speak calmly, I wonder if they'll calm down. So I'm like, I might as well try it before we commence with the festivities, because I didn't stretch. And the person screaming at me, and I literally just looked at him and said, I can hear you. And the person responded, was like, I know. And I was like, oh my God, it worked. I got to get another fight. You got to confirm the information, right? I need to get another yelling argument. It didn't take long. And I calmed down, it worked again. And I'm like, oh man, I can control my environment. This is wisdom, right? And I'm like, well, what do I do if I don't want to yell? Like, how do I get peace? Right? And I'm looking it up, and a lot of people know the verses, and but basically it comes down to steps. And I always looked at the Bible, some religious book, and you sound good, and holy and are, but start breaking it down into steps, right? And Philippians 4, 6, and 7 says, be anxious for nothing. Anxious means not to worry. So I was like, man, I worry all the time. No wonder I don't have peace. Step 1, all right, don't worry. But in everything, I looked that word up, means all. All means everything, and everything means all. So don't be worried about everything, which is prayer, which is just conversation between you and God, right? And but conversation means both to listen and to speak. And I did a lot of speaking, I didn't do a lot of listening, so I had to learn how to listen. And then it says, by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving. Supplication is just an old English word that means humble request. So don't worry, talk to God, listen, thank Him for everything. And I started thinking about that. Well, everything means negative and positive. I'd never thanked God for anything negative in my whole life, because that's stupid. And I was like, all right. And like a teenager, I was like, thank you, Lord, for the rarest brain injury of all time. And the next day, I had peace. And it worked. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And it worked. So I started thanking Him for things that I was worried about. And instead of me worrying about it, I'm like, all right, you know what you're doing, so this is your problem. And it started working. And I started getting peace. And I couldn't believe it, because it was actually working. And so I took the next 4 years and I broke down the entire book of Proverbs by category. And I created a program. While this is going on, I'd been healthy enough to be able to go outside for 1 hour a week. And in that hour, I had a family member ask me if I want to go down to the jail and teach inmates. And I'm like, sure. So I'd go down to the jail. I'd teach them for 1 hour. I'd go home. I'd be sick for 3 days. The migraines, the vertigo, the vomiting, the motion sickness. But I got to do something. And that something was so important, because that was value, right? And I was like, man, That's all right. I like that, right? And after, it took me 3 years to get my license back. And they said, you never drive, you're never going to work, everyone dies within 20 years. There was no hope. There was absolutely no hope. And I was like, well, either God's a liar and we're going to test it, or this is real. It's one or the other. And so I started going down to jail. Well, inevitably what happened is they offered me a job, which I wasn't supposed to have. And I got the job, and I created the curriculum. 18 videos of programs that teaches people how to put information in the right spot. So, an example, trying to get peace, or trying to handle anger, dealing with depression, dealing with stress, dealing with relationships, how to communicate. And being a terrible communicator, when all of this is going on, and this is when I finally realized I had a problem. I had gone to a therapist, and we were at the very tail end of science, and they had me go into this therapy place, and they're shooting my brain with a laser to try to regrow deep brain tissue, and it didn't work. And so we're in there, and this is when I realized I probably was never going to have friends again. And I'm sitting in there, and this portly Indian fella comes in, and I had a noon appointment. And I don't know if you've ever smelled curry before, but it does not smell good when you're not used to it. And so from my perspective, what happened, the guy's shooting me with the gun. All of a sudden, he slams the gun down, walks out, and slams the door. And I'm like, man, what a jerk, right? So I waited a couple minutes because I didn't know what to do. And then his boss comes in, and she says, Mr. Walsh, you cannot tell my employee it smells like a cat pooped in their mouth. And I'm like, man, I was just thinking that, right? And then it's, oh, no, I just said that to somebody. So do you defend or do you apologize, right? So I was like, ma'am, there's no way you have not smelled his breath before, and he's not coming in here without some Big Red because that's disgusting. And she said, you know what, I think I'll finish up the appointment. I said, okay. So she kind of giggled, and I giggled, and I was like, whew, right? And so she finishes up the appointment, and I go to leave the door. And like I said, it's a therapy place, and it's got the bars and the balls and the bands and all that. And I look to my left. And as I look to my left, the gentleman that had been shooting me with the laser was bent over picking something up, and he had forgot underwear day. And I thought it would be funny if someone takes a quarter out of their pocket, put it into the slot, and yell, jackpot. However, when you actually do that, they get a little offended. And beyond my capability of science, how that quarter made it from where I put it to the ground, I do not know. But I did tell him he was could keep the quarter, and I'm pretty sure I was never going to be in public again because you can't do this. And when you don't know you're doing it, and a lot of people judge me on it, and that makes sense to me. It really makes sense. But if what you thought came out of your mouth, how bad would that be? Right? That's an excellent question. And I was living that all the time. So it took me forever to get this done. And while this going on, I get hired on, and I was told that the chaplaincy I was working for was the one of the more difficult chaplaincies to work for. And I was like, oh, I'll clean it up. And prior to the car accident, I did hostile contract negotiations for a safety company. And I would deal with small contracts, anything to $1 to $3 million. And when there was an issue and we were losing the contract, I would go in and I would fix the problem. And so I used to be really good with people, and I used to be really good with handling high stress. Now I still am very good at high stress, but I didn't trust myself to speak, so I became an excellent listener because my mouth never stopped going. And so I actually had to reteach myself how to talk to people because if I didn't, the outcome was severe. And so we're going through this, and within 90 days, we had cleaned out a bunch of things out of there. They said it couldn't be done. Within a year and a half, we went from one of the more worst chaplaincies to a training center for the whole eastern side of the state, which wasn't supposed to be impossible. And all the things that we were able to accomplish as a team, they said were impossible. And impossible means cannot be done. Cannot be done. So I'm sitting there, and we finish up, and all of a sudden, I start losing a pound a day. Now, at first, when you're 235, you're peeling a pound a day. It's no big deal. 10 pounds, no problem. 20 pounds, not a big deal. 30 pounds, feeling good. 40 pounds, we have an issue. 50 pounds, we have a problem. I started weighing my food. 2 pounds of meat a day I was eating, I was losing half a pound. Losing half a pound, losing half a pound, losing half a pound. I went from 238 to 157 in 38 days. What I didn't know at the time is that I was going into organ failure and my body had stopped producing human growth hormone. And I had happened to be going to my eye doctor of all places, and we went in and my wife had talked to her about what's going on. And she said, you know what, I'm going to send you over to my friend's place. Well, her friend happened to be Dr. Ailes-O'Holly. Now, Dr. Ailes-O'Holly is the brain injury specialist for the Red Wings and the Lions, which that's a pretty good friend to have. And she works with my glasses, and so I wear the hat and the glasses for the migraines to limit sound light coming in and allows me to get outside. So at this time, I was able to go outside for about 3 hours. Still getting sick for 2-3 days a week. Very sick. And when I started going into getting ready to go into organ failure, I was sleeping 22 hours a day, and I wasn't able to go into the jail. And I would have, my job was to get out of bed, go 8 steps to the door, 3 steps to the steps, 14 steps downstairs, 6 steps to the couch, watch TV for 1 hour, come back, reverse those steps, and sleep for 22 hours. So I go to the doctor, and he says, I'm going to inject you with this saline, and if you go unconscious, we'll know what you have. So he injects me. I go unconscious in 4 seconds. He revives me, and he says, well, what you have is your pineal gland stopped working, and it's not producing human growth hormone. He said the average rate of human growth hormone is about 5 milligrams per 15 minutes. He said, you're producing 0.069 of 1 milligram, he said, which is the smallest amount I've ever seen in a live human in my entire life. And he said, if we don't get this fixed, you're in trouble. I said, okay. So we called the insurance company, and they said, sue us. It takes 2 years to sue them. I had 30 days before I was 120 pounds, and I was going to be going into organ failure. My body was literally eating itself. It was so terrifying. So I said, all right. And my wife come in, and we planned I was 41. They planned my last birthday party. I have the pictures. I look very, very sick because I was. And we kind of knew it was going to be my last birthday. And so we had a party, and that was my 1 hour outside. And I went home after that, and I told my wife, it's going to be okay, knowing that was a lie. And that night I said, God, I'm just tired. I said, here it is. I said, you either give me something to do, and I'll always say yes, or let me die. Both answers are fine. A couple days later, we get a call from Pfizer with a P, the insurance company, and I have no idea how they got our information. To this day, I have no idea. And they said, we're coming to your house in 24 hours, and we're going to have a doctor there, and we're suing your insurance company, and you'll have your injections. And it's just what happened. And I'm sitting there like, oh, crap. I said I'd say yes to everything, right? And it's like, jeez, and I'm like, man, all right. Go big or go home. Like, it is what it is. Like, he put it out there. That's just what happened. Those are the facts. Some people are like, I don't believe it. And that's like, great. That's one of the options. It changes nothing. That's just what happened. So I go back to the jail, and we're getting in there, and they offered me the top position. And I was like, God, I want to do the thing that brings you the most glory, right? And so he said, turn down the job, right? Which totally sucked because you were working for 3.5 years to fix something, got it better than anyone said it was possible, and then you have to turn it down, right? So we're sitting there, and I was like, I got to say no. And that made a lot of people mad. I didn't want to do it. I'd done all the work, but I'm like, well, if there's a plan, there's a plan. This is what he said, so do it. And I'm like, well, Lord, if you want me to quit, I'm too stupid to quit. You're going to fire me, right? I've never been fired from anything in my life. My work ethic's always been really good. So sure enough, 2 years later, I get fired, which was fine. The guy that was there is a great dude. We just had different ways of doing things. So very much in the community and public, and that job requires you to be inside, and those two things just didn't mix, and it was all good. 1 month later, working with Aaron Rubio from UCAN, United Community Addiction Network. And he said, well, why don't you come on our board? And so I go over to his office, and he's got a room in there, and he's like, I'm like, hey, what are you doing with that? What's that room over there? And he's like, oh, that's my internet room. And I said, can I do podcasts in there? He said, yeah. I was like, all right. And I got the idea of spiritual warfare unit, right? It's a constant battle, but I want to find leaders who want to help people in the community, and faith is a part of that journey. And so I was like, all right, we'll do that. And I started interviewing people, faith-based, nonprofit people, and I get their story, and I'm like, let me give you this so you can have it, so people can see what you're doing. And then that turned into a list of nonprofits that are helping people. And I'm like, man, I ought to make a list so people can find this list, right? SpiritualWarfareUnit.com, right? Click on struggling. And everybody down there helps the community out at no cost, right? And we keep that list. And then my buddy says, well, you want to be on radio? I was like, I got a perfect face for radio. I want to be on radio. And so he's like, here's my buddy. And buddy's like, yeah, what do you want to do? So we come up with a comic like Dumbest Criminals and stuff going on in Flint, right? Friday night, Saturday night, yada, yada, whatever. It's fun. We're laughing, cracking jokes. And then he's like, hey, you want to put that on television? I was like, are you for real? He's like, yeah, cable channel 17, right? And I'm like, cool, let's put it on television. Saturdays, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on cable channel 17. You can check it out, right? And the cool thing about it is everybody I interview is a leader and helps people. And that's my favorite thing about it, because the beautiful thing about a death experience is money, power, and authority is great. Like, those are great things. Having stuff's awesome. Doing things and traveling's great. But the only thing that I get to take with me when I leave here is people. So I should probably spend my time helping people. And that's the function. And so every single person I started helping, and I said, you know what, let's put you, we'll do a podcast, right? Just like George has let me do here. And then let me put you on radio. Let me put you on television. Let me send you a market. Here's the times it's going to be on there. You be the star. I don't care. Let me sit there and talk to you and have a good time, and let me know why you do what you do. I know why I do what I do. Why do you do what you do? Tell me. And you meet the most amazing people, and typically they've gone through something really difficult, and I can relate to that. And I want to let people know, not only did this person go through something difficult, they chose to take that difficulty, instead of turning into a victim, they turn into a survivor, and they help people, right? And that story is so awesome, and I love doing that. And we're sitting there doing that, and everyone said, it's impossible, it can't be done. There's no way that you can get this done. Now, to this day, as we're sitting, I can go outside for 6 hours, which is an eternity when you've been stuck in your house for 15 years, right? Now I'm doing this, and we're helping the people out. And last July, my friend Todd was like, oh, I want to work out with somebody. I was like, oh, I'll do it, right? So in the middle of this story, I didn't say this, but I played soccer, and I was able to play at a semi-pro level, and I was above average. And I won a high school championship, won a semi-pro championship, which was great, and it was all wonderful. And but I hadn't been able to work out because the migraines had been so bad. Well, that September, one of the two things I struggle with stopped. And so I started doing a 3-hour workout, and everybody says, oh, that's insane, right? And I was like, well, I used to do a 5.5-hour workout. So 3 hours really isn't that much. And 1 hour of it's walking, because I was not slim, right? And it's pretty bad when you're walking on the treadmill and there's all these buff guys and your stomach's bouncing off the little ledge where you got your keys, and you're like, yeah, that's awesome. And but I kept doing it. Kept doing it. Next thing you know, people are like, man, you're looking really good. And I was like, well, I didn't mean to. I'm just trying to get healthy, right? And I'm like, all right, this is cool. Start getting better. My friend starts getting better. And then, like, now God's been doing some cool stuff in my life. And November happens, and I'm praying. And I'm listening, not just talking. And he said, the next 6 months are going to be tough, but something cool's coming. And I was like, oh, okay. Here's what happened in the next 6 months. So this was in last November. We got a new roof, because my buddy put our name in, which was very kind. And then when they finished, we had a waterfall inside of our living room. And then they came and fixed it, and it broke. And they came and fixed it, and it broke. Came and fixed it, and it broke 6 times. While that's going on, my wife gets her oil changed on her new car, and they forgot to put the oil plug in, and the engine seizes. 2 weeks later, my very good friend goes into a coma from a flesh-eating pneumonia and is found unconscious in his hotel room. Then our hot water heater died. Our dishwasher broke. We started getting water inside the kitchen because the tub just started leaking because, why not? My producer had a myocardial infarction, and there's something else I can't think of right now that all happened just bang, 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 bang. But here's the cool things. My wife started to stress out about it. She said, oh, this is terrible. And was it terrible? Yeah. But here's also what happened. They gave us a free rental for the car to be fixed for 2 months and fix the engine. So we got an engine with 0 miles. The roof gets fixed. They come in. They take care of everything. Now we got a new ceiling in the living room, right? No cost. A friend of mine said, I'm going to buy you a dishwasher because you've been going through it and I want to help you out. The hot water heater happened to be covered by the insurance, which I didn't even know we had, right? My producer's starting to do walks and getting better. I go down to Ohio to see my friend. He freaks out because I'm there, which was weird. And so while he's in a coma, our first day down there, the lady says he's got 16 hours to live. He's not going to make it. You need to prepare yourself. And he was completely gray. Like they'd open up his eyes and it was just, there's nothing. And I'm there with my friend Steve. And he said, I'm going to put him on a prayer chain. I was like, all right. And I'd heard of those, but I'm like, whatever, man. Like I'm logical. Like whatever. And then the next day he started getting better. So I'm like, well, he's an amputee. So I said, well, let's take his leg and take some pictures around the hospital. And they're like, what for? I said, because he needs something to laugh at when he wakes up. And my favorite one was we actually took his leg and stuck it in the elevator. And when this happened, there's a doctor to my right. And she looks at me, and I'm holding his leg. And she looks at me and says, I don't even want to know. And I'm like, that makes sense to me. Because my buddy was on the second floor, and we are going to put the leg in the elevator. So then when the camera come, it would open up, and there's just a leg in there, which was funny. And moving on. And so we did that. And sure enough, he got better, right? 12 days later, he wakes up from a flesh-eating pneumonia. It's the second one in the United States. I'm like, dude, you just can't get pneumonia. You got to get a flesh-eating pneumonia. And he was so thankful we were there, which was weird. And we were able to get him home, right? And we got him home. And then the producer's getting better. And every single thing that I went through already had a solution. The environment was only set to see if I was going to trust or not trust. And when you look at it in perspective, I'd already been through death, car accident, rarest brain injury of all time, and going into organ failure to die a second time. So that was stress. Was this annoying? Yes. But comparatively, it's not even the same stress. So if it took care of me here, he's going to take care of me there. That's how it works, right? So we get through that, and we get rolling, and now we're here at this point, and I get to tell you this story. And if you're struggling, let us know, because when everything's great, I'm really not your guy. But when the crap hits the fan and you're depressed and you're struggling and you need food, you need clothes, you need your kids' help, you need help with drug rehabilitation, you need help with alcohol, I'm your guy. When you need someone to stand with you, I'm your guy. I stand, because when we went through this, we went completely alone, right? And I'll end on this. One of the best pieces of wisdom that I ever received was this. I had a family member who made a point to come up to my job and tell everybody I was faking my brain injury because I wanted attention. The anger and depression that I went through, why this person did it, was really frustrating. And I went out to breakfast with this person, and they said, tell me all the good things going in your life. And I told them 5 or 6 things. So I was doing all the stuff, radio and television, and the book and autobiography and yada yada, motivational speaking. And I said I met these amazing people at a cigar shop. And their response was dirty cigar smokers. And I remember I sat back, and instead of being mad, I started to think. And I said, you asked me how things are going, and your response was, I told you all this amazing stuff. And it's not interesting to me that you found something about me you don't like because I'm not perfect. What's interesting is that you're looking for it. And I realized at that moment, they're not on my side. And I started to think, why don't I listen to this information? And this person is not on my side. And it was like, you know what? That's one of the options. You're allowed to not be on my side. That's how this works. But it gave me peace to let it go, right? And that's the story.
So, wow, Isaac. Wow. First off, thank you for coming. Thank you for gracing Out of the Mud with your story. And thanks for being my friend. You know, I met you at the Dirty Cigar Lounge. You know, and you're a great guy, man.
Thank you.
Met you through Todd, the guy's eating up by worms over here. And he's been a great guy. So I'm truly, look, stop tearing up. Man.
Sorry, man, it's emotional.
Up. Look, I shouldn't have put the pepper and salt on the table.
Nice, well played.
So I'm very appreciative of it. So I've heard your story a few times, and it never gets old. It's one of those things, like it's wow after wow after wow after what after wow after what wow.
Yeah.
And my first question is how, and maybe you did, but how do you stay positive? And did you have a Job moment, like, why the heck, God, what just let me go? You know, you don't love me. Right. You're not real. Yeah. How do you get through that? Did you deal with that, and how did you get through that?
Man, that's such a great question, George. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, it was a suicide spot because life had no meaning because I couldn't do anything. And everything was taken. As a man, you can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of your wife, your kids, your family. You're sick constantly. And I had grown up in church, and again, not to speak negatively about it, but my experience was you fit in with these people or you don't, and I clearly didn't, and I was totally fine with it. Like, it wasn't a thing for me, but there was no relationship. And so at that moment when it was like, Lord, either you're real, or what difference does it make? What difference does it make? And then it came through. And then the other second part of that answer is when I was researching Proverbs, and that information worked in real life, right? Like, let me give you an example. And here's one for you guys. If someone, every time you tell a story, is there someone that's got a better story, right? Do they have, every time you got a story, they got a bigger story? And I started looking that up, of why it does it, right? And there's a bunch of different verses on it, but basically it says that the person is going to flatter with their lips, which I thought that just meant to tell them how great they were. But the definition of the word actually means to spread a net or a trap. So they're being kind to you to get that information so then they can talk about you later. And then it says that those are like wounds that go into the belly, which means hurts your soul because you trust them. And the whole reason they're nice to you is so they can get that story so they can talk trash about you somewhere else. And then you're the big story with somebody else. And I'm like, man, I don't know if this is true. Let's test it. And then I tested it, and 2 weeks later, it was like the story but more embellished. And I'm like, well, these people can't be hanging out with my friends. Who are they hanging out with? And they were hanging out with my enemies. And I'm like, why am I hanging out with that person if they're hanging out with my enemies? And I'm like, man, that totally works. I got to practice this. And I just started practicing these things because I was a terrible communicator. And then it proved the theory. If the logic works, then the faith has to be real and the outcome has to be true. On the other side, if it's lies and anger and hatred, and that's a thought process, then so is trust, faith, and truth. And those things battle each other. And the logic proved itself. And I'm like, okay, this is what I'm looking for. And it doesn't matter how hard it is because it works. And that became the answer.
Okay. That kind of answers something else that I've questioned about you, too. So you're a very accomplished person. That part right there, that kind of like, yeah, right. You ranked in the top 5 in a state chess tournament.
It was the lowest level.
Hold on. Pause. Stop undermining yourself. And then you just told a part of a story where you played semi-pro soccer.
Yeah, for Capital Kickers.
I didn't know nothing about.
Yeah.
And you said, what was that you guys won?
We won a championship. Yeah.
You did what?
We won a championship.
One more time.
We took first one time.
Okay. So many parts about your life. You're an awesome, amazing, and very accomplished person. but you always undercut it like it doesn't mean much. And at first, like after probably the third or fourth time, I like, man, why aren't you giving yourself props?
Yeah.
But you telling the story today,
Yeah.
the way that you did, and what you just said now,
Yeah.
it kind of answers that for me.
Yeah. Well, it's because those things don't define me. They're just, as our friend Todd would say, it's just a checkbox. Like when we won the Chester, I finished third in the tournament, and it was the lowest level, but it was something to do. And I'll give credence to Todd on this. And he's got the trophy, and we're we're celebrating. And he goes to we go to this place, and he starts laughing in my face, which was funny. And he's like, you don't even care about the trophy. I was like, no. And he was like, do you understand why this is inspirational? And I was like, no. And he was like, you just did to check a box. I want to see if I could do it. I want to see under pressure, I want to know who I am. And then once I've done it, like, check, all right, I got that. We got the championship. We got the high school championship. We got the semi-pro championship. Great. We got the chest. Finished third in the state. Awesome. On to the next thing, because I'm challenging myself constantly. And the outcome is less important to me than the trophy, because that trophy doesn't make me. That choice does. And so talking about that accomplishment, to me, is of no consequence, because the point was the test.
But you do understand that some people do stuff like that so they can crap on other people.
Absolutely. If the way my mind interprets that information is that if you need something to make you good, then you don't think you're good. And I don't have that issue. Not anymore. I did before. Like, I had to have this car, or this clothes, or this ring, or this. But that thing is empty. And the more you do it, the less it works. And so,
okay, well, go on that. Speak on before all of this stuff. So how was your life before that? What were you like this billionaire that had everything? And
no. So I was
just disappeared.
Yeah. No, great question again, George. Thank you. I was a Flint kid. I ended up working for safety. They did lockout, tagout placards, and I started as an engineer. I got the job, and I traveled 40 weeks a year. I traveled all over the country, and in hotels and food and going out and doing all that. And it was great and all that. And then we had a job in Montgomery, Alabama, and we were losing a $1.2 million contract. And they said, we need you to go out there. We're probably going to lose it, but do your best. And not only did I get the contract, I got a secondary contract. And so the president said, how'd you do that? I said, what are you talking about? And I said, it was just a challenge, and I did what they asked. And so he was like, well, we got this other problem. And then I out in Kraft, and I took care of that. And I said, well, we got this other problem out in Raytheon, and I took care of that. And I finished a $6 million deal. And I wasn't making that much money. You don't get the contract money, but I was doing well. I had to have my Armani shirt. I had to have my $250 glasses. I mean, I looked.
Wait. You say you weren't making that much money, but you were spending it all on clothes.
I'm saying that some of it was spent on clothes. You know what I'm saying? Like,
gotcha.
I had to have that car. I had to have the black Cadillac.
So you were comfortable.
I had a condo in Rochester. I made it.
You were comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. But it wasn't satisfying. Like you get there and you're 29, 30 years old, and people are like, oh, that's amazing. And it was, and it's like, don't you wish you were me? But everything was a competition. And then even when you get to that spot, you're still alone, which was stupid, because it was like, now everybody's envious of me, so instead of me wanting what they want what I got, and this is dumb. That's not even the point. If I'm not investing in what you like and going, that's the guy. My coolest thing about me is I know the coolest people. And let me introduce you to these cool people that can help you. And then when they do it, go talk to them, because they're awesome. But that's the switch,
So, did you have that understanding before the accident? No. Or did that accident that caused the understanding?
I had to lose everything to understand how to gain everything. Because without death as an experience, well, what's the next thing? What are we doing tonight? Right? Oh, we're going to this bar, we're going to see these girls and do this thing and hang out and do this stuff, right? And then it was like, well, that's great. And then what are you doing? Well, what are we doing the next night? Right? And then everything's empty. When you get done, you have that experience, but then afterwards, you did it for you. I knew. I knew it was about me, and I got to play the big shot and look at me, and, I'll go ahead and pay for this meal. You guys go ahead. Right? I didn't do that for them. I did that for me because I was empty. And I want to pretend that I was this person I was trying to be. But I don't pretend to be anything anymore.
Okay, so let's get to the transformation, of the spiritual transformation.
Sure.
When you actually dug in and said, I'm doing this. So
Yeah.
the question is, did you ever have a relapse in the process once you made the commitment?
Man, really good question. Every day, bro. Like I had a friend of mine just recently. He said, man, you never struggle with anything. He said, I haven't seen you make a bad decision or get upset or get frustrated. I had some stuff happen. And I said, no. I said, the battle is here. The spiritual battle is in your mind, and you got one of two choices. I'm either going to handle this in a way that gives God glory, which means being honest and faithful and true, or I'm going to lie, right? I'm going to get mad. I'm going to get frustrated. And all of that process produces an outcome that doesn't work. So I had to decide to make a decision. Why in the world would I do something that doesn't work? It doesn't matter how easy it is, but I've never met a person that hasn't struggled being mad. I've never met a single person that hasn't struggled with being frustrated, with being depressed. Everybody struggles with that. And the question became, how is it everybody knows how to fail, but people don't know how to succeed? And that proved the theory, because if we didn't need God, then why is failing the normal thing? And I had to come to that conclusion. And I knew, like, I had a rage problem. Not only did I like to fight, I was good at it, and I wanted to. Go, I got to get rid of that stress. And if you hadn't have been a jerk, but it was because I need to get rid of that rage because I didn't know how to communicate. And I grew up in a home that was just normal,
So taking that, because that's a certain rage that sometimes, because I deal with that sometimes, where I'm out of shape and all this stuff. So I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to embarrass myself, but it's still there, like, you just don't know.
Yeah.
You just don't know. So how do you deal with it to put that back in the package, so it doesn't become anxiety or depression, or some kind of PTSD response?
Again, just perfect question, right on the nose, buddy. And the answer is, remember I was telling you I get peace earlier? And the thing that I'm worried about or mad about, I thank God for, because I'm mad because it's not going the way I want. And if you'd have just done what I said, but I don't know what the best plan is for me. I don't even know why I'm here. I just know that I am. So either I have to come to facts that God's real and he's got a plan, and if he does, then he knows why this is here. And if he doesn't, then it doesn't matter if I get mad or not. Well, I don't like myself when I do that, so that can't be the answer. I don't like the outcome, because then I have to apologize, and you're the jerk, and I don't like that outcome, and then I'm depressed that I do it, and I do it all over again. So now I'm in a cycle, so that answer doesn't work. Okay. Well, you say don't be anxious. Don't worry. When I worry, I get mad. When I get mad, I lash out. So, okay, so each thing I get frustrated about, all right, Lord, I trust you more than I trust me, and I failed 9 out of 10 times, 99 out of 100, right? I suck so bad at this, it was ridiculous. But the one time that it worked was so great, it was addicting. And I'm like, I want that. Because one time it was like, nope, I'm not, you know what, I'm going to get shot. And I'll give you a W on this one. I just had a couple of weeks ago. I'm at the gym, and I'm working out, and this dude's having a day. And we'll call him elliptical guy. And you go to the gym, and it's against the rules to take your shirt off, right? Because whatever, that's the rule. It's 6:05 in the morning, man. I don't even want to talk to somebody, let alone deal with something. I'm just trying to get my grind, right? So he takes his shirt off, and he's doing all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to this other area. Well, about 5 minutes later, I hear screaming like, you don't tell me what to do. And I'm just like, jeez. And this little 5'0" poor girl takes a bus to work, and God bless her, is telling him, sir, you got to put your shirt on. He freaks out, right? So now I'm like, all right, it's go time, right? So I walk over there. Now, normally, you know how it is. Adrenaline kicks.
Get ready to rumble.
In the next corner, coming out of the great fighting state of Michigan. And I'm like, okay, right? Well, he jumps up on the Stairmaster, and dude, like, you know how you can feel something? He turned around, mean mugged me, right? And jumps off this thing, gets in my face. And he's like, why don't you mind your own business? And I said, I was minding my own business. I said, you started yelling at this little girl. Now you got my full and undivided attention. I said, hi, my name's Isaac. What's your name? Just like that. And he looks at me. He's like, what? I was like, my name's Isaac. What is your name? He's like, well, my name's such and such. And I said, do you want some breakfast? And he goes, breakfast? I'm like, yeah, because you can't think and be mad. You got to do one or you got to do the other. He starts to calm down, right? The other girl comes up, you're not going to tell her. He blows up, right? Right as that happens, I feel my left foot slide behind my right, and I'm like liver, solar plexus up, like it's all there, right? And I looked at the dude, and he looks at me, and he goes, I'm an alpha male. And I just smiled, and I said, brother, if you got to say it, you know what I'm saying? Look at your face.
You have to say it.
Right.
You are not it.
Right. So then he looks at me, and I said, like, just put your shirt on. Just, like, call it a day. It's all good, man. Just that calm. He yells, he leaves, yada, yada, a couple of things go on, dude. Never adrenaline rush. I was completely under control because it's like this scenario has a purpose. And for that moment, it could have gone a whole nother way, and I'd have been right to do it. And I still didn't like that guy. And because I'm like, all right, Lord, I trust you more than I trust me, it worked. And I had to deal with it that it worked. And once it worked, it was like, well, it don't matter how hard it is, it works. And I'm not going to continue to fail no matter how easy it is because you fail. And it took me some years, man. But I've been studying this for 15 years. I got an entire program that we put on there. And we do motivational speaking. And we're doing a whole concert at the American Legion in Swartz Creek, October 5th. It's a 5-hour show. It's all positive. It's free for veterans. Come out. We have a cigar area. We're going to have a baked potato bar. We're going to have a bar. We're doing 50-50 rafts. And all the money we get goes to another concert so veterans don't have to pay for it. I don't keep a single dollar. I just give it to the people that help me out, man. I just want to help people.
Okay. Now, we're almost at the transition of this today's show. Because I really want you to come back and we talk about other things and more stuff. And I would like Todd to, come and talk too. But when you were going through the process of trying to come back from the accident and relearning things and trying to figure out why in the world did people hear what was inside your head that you didn't realize you said.
Yeah.
Were you working? What was your support? How did you get through all that? Was it just all on your wife? How were you making money?
Yeah, another super great question, man. So just getting to the soul of it. So I went into disability and I had one meeting. And the lady looks exactly like you think, man. Silver hair, red lipstick, half-rimmed glasses. I get done with the meeting. Well, at first I walk in there and she said, why do you need disability? I said, is that what I'm here for? I was like, I'm out. Because once you get on that, man, you ain't ever getting off. By the time we ended that meeting, she gets up and she shakes my hand. She said, you're the type of person we have disability for. She said, you're approved. And I said, I don't want your money. I make dollars. I don't want these pennies. I don't want this. And she shook my hand. And I cried. And we lost everything. And it was on my wife. And I told her at the beginning, I said, listen, I said, I don't know what's going on. I'll write you a check. We'd been married 2 years. I said, I'll write you a check, and I get it.
This was 2 years within your marriage?
Yeah, and she didn't leave, bro. I would not have made it. I'm not the man sitting here without her. It's facts. I have nothing negative to say about her. Is she perfect? No. But is she spectacular? Heck yeah. And just to prove it scientifically, 85% of people that have a permanent injury end up in divorce. So that tells you about her. Boom. Yeah.
So, you guys made it through.
So far, yeah.
And it went from comfortable to all about character.
Well, it was being built, right? Yeah, and I didn't have it, but I was searching. Like, I'm a truth person. At the end of the day, I want to know why we're doing something. The who, what, when, where, and why of it. But I want to know how to do it. And then once I do it, I don't want to keep it. I want everybody else to get it. And so I coach people through things who are going through difficulties because that experience of dying and getting sick and almost dying a second time, it gives me a perspective, and it forced me to look at the Bible from a perspective of how to do it instead of just trying to look like I'm good, because that doesn't work. And then it worked, and the more I studied this for 15 years. I broke down the entire book of Proverbs by category, all 31 chapters. And it gave me this wisdom, and I implement, and that's why I listen instead of speak. That's why I'm kind instead of mean. And if I can find the nicest way to say something that you're not going to like the information, it's not personal. You have value, but in this case, this scenario, this information, you're gonna need this because you're struggling in this area, which is a way nicer saying going, well, the truth doesn't really care about your feelings, so that's how I used to do it, right? So the credit goes to the book. I didn't write the book, but it works.
Okay, so Isaac, tell people who you are again, how to get in touch with you, and what you have going on.
Yeah. So I work for UCAN, UCAN, United Community Addiction Network, and UCANMichigan.com. And if you're just struggling and you need some help and you need clothes or food or diapers, you want to put your kids into a different school, no cost. Swimming lessons this summer, no cost. Spiritual Warfare Unit.com. Click on struggling. Ministry Mafia is another one we're getting onto. And we have 20 different nonprofits. That's all no cost, just to help you out. But if you're somebody that's like, man, I want to do something, we're building. And if you got an idea, I'll put you on my podcast at no cost. We will help you out. We're looking to get an online store so you can put your swag on there and help build your product. And I'll do it all no cost, just to help you. And that's how you can help us, is by helping us help others, man. Just help me help you, and be that leader you want to be. I mean, you only got so much time, and then it's gone. And here's the thing. Every 90 days, I got to do 24 shots in my head and face for migraines. I do stomach injections every single day. I have migraines and nerve damage on my body every single day, but I'm still used, right? I'm still used, and there's still a plan. And if you have an idea and you want to help people, let me help you.
Tell them about your show you got going on.
Right. Spiritual Warfare Unit on YouTube, The Warrior's Way, and it's on Spotify. We're going to be getting on other platforms soon. You can come check it out. Just like and subscribe, and there's some very interesting, if you're struggling with stuff, we got some really great stories on there. And if you need help, come check it out. And if you got an idea and you want to come on the show, you let me know, and we will do what we can to help you out.
Don't you have a comedy show coming?
Comedy show? No, we got October 5th. We got a free concert at the American Legion off of Morris Road. The American Legion in Swartz Creek, which is a great bunch of guys out there. Free for veterans. Come out, enjoy the concert. It'll be a 5-hour show. We'll have acoustical, we'll have classic, we'll have a little harder rock, we'll have a cigar area around the fire. It's October 5th, so it's going to be wonderful. And we're going to have a baked potato bar out there. There's full bar. We'll do 50-50 raffles. I'll be giving my story. And hopefully you can come out and I can meet you. And if you got a story and you're struggling, I want to hear it, just so you don't have to battle by yourself. Use that Spiritual Warfare Unit mind. Battle.
Last question.
Please.
What branch and when did you serve?
Navy Seabee, July of 94 to March of 03.
Thank you for your service.
Right
Thank
back
you for
at
coming
you.
on the show. Peace, world.
Peace.